Hi, I'm Sophia Weiland, reporter for Death Valley Insider on the Rivals.com and Yahoo Sports Network. I'm joined here by Rebel Grove's Chase Parham to preview LSU's series finale against Ole Miss on Thursday night. So, yeah, I'll let you take the lead.
I guess it's a pretty interesting series. You can kind of guide me on where you want to go here, but two teams that need wins. They need a different number of wins, and a pretty crazy wrinkle considering it's the two last national champions, and they're dealing with some of the same things. Even though Ole Miss is 2 years in a row that they have been in this situation. LSU probably needing all three this weekend to make the NCAA tournament, at least to feel good about their chances. Two teams that have really good metrics. Ole Miss is 24 in the RPI, I think, this morning. LSU 29, 30, 31, somewhere in there the last time I checked. But there's sort of this glass ceiling, and it's, can you get to 13 SEC wins in the regular season? LSU currently at 10. They need all three, obviously, to get to that number. Ole Miss at 11 right now. They need two of them, and historically a place that Ole Miss has not played well. Ole Miss did not win a series in Baton Rouge from 1982 until 2019.
Oh, wow.
However, they have won. They're 5-1 in the last six. There, they swept LSU in 2022, a year that Ole Miss won the national title, and then they won the series in 2019 as well. But two teams that are more talented than their record, obviously, because they're in the SEC. They've recruited well. They've got a lot of good players. They've jumped in the portal and picked up guys, but teams that show you there's a price that comes with continuity, that having guys that have been in your program and culture and identity and all those buzzwords that people talk about. And I think that, that's where Ole Miss has scuffled, especially, is that they haven't had that nucleus of homegrown talent that the portal guys can just sort of latch onto and pick up their identity and their culture and play with that. It's kind of been aimless in a way. And I think with LSU, it's been somewhat of the same thing coming off that national title last year, because, the national sentiment in some ways was, LSU goes out and they buy a title. They have Paul Skeens and Tommy White and those kind of guys, but that wasn't the truth. You've got Trey Morgan and Gavin Dugas and all those guys on last year's team that we had been in the program for a really long time. Dylan Cruz, obviously. So I don't know. It's a very interesting series for me, just from that standpoint of,
Yeah.
two teams that have scuffled the entire season, and can one of them find a way into the postseason, find a way to get a little bit of equilibrium as we move forward into the postseason.
Okay, well, that answers kind of my first question. I was going to ask your opinion on if you think Ole Miss has a chance postseason after this weekend, but you kind of covered that. So unless you want to touch a little more onto that.
Yeah. I mean, the answer is I think probably getting two is enough, just because of where they are. They have the number 2 strength of schedule in the country. They have the 6th most top 25 wins in the country, just virtue of playing that difficult schedule. I will say this: Ole Miss lost the Governor's Cup game, which is a midweek game against Mississippi State that doesn't count in the conference standings. They lost that game, and let's say they even get to at LSU and they get to 13. They go to Hoover on Tuesday, and if you lose on Tuesday in Hoover, you're done there. Well, that's 13-19 in SEC games. That's not very good. I think it gets them in. I think they're still okay, but that would be your concern if you're Ole Miss, is just looking at some of those conference metrics, because dating back to 2006, I believe, is when this started. There's never been a team reach the NCAA tournament that only won 13 SEC games without a win in Hoover or a midweek conference, non-conference game, if you will. I'm using air quotes for it. This is a podcast. So they have to break that glass ceiling if that's the case. But I think that we're in a position right now that's kind of where they are. We're more metrically driven than we were in past seasons, especially a decade ago. I mean, you saw, I get it's nowhere near the same sport, but in softball, all 13 SEC teams made the NCAA tournament in women's softball, and that included Ole Miss with a 7-17 SEC record. They still got in as a 3 seed at ULL for next week. So yeah, I think Ole Miss has a chance. It's just what the problem has been for Ole Miss all year, which is, can they be consistent enough to put 2 of 3 games together? I mean, I don't give them, I don't give them a majority chance to win 2 out of 3 in Baton Rouge, but it's certainly doable. LSU's not played very well this season. And if Ole Miss does that, yeah, I think they'll be one of the 64 teams that have their name called next week.
So who do you think Ole Miss's starting pitchers are going to be this week? for this
They've
weekend?
had a pretty set rotation in the last few weeks. They're going to go with Riley Maddox on Thursday. Riley Jr. had Tommy John surgery in 2022, his freshman season. Came back a little bit last year, and then has been really good this year. But the results haven't shown it because he's a sinker ball pitcher. He throws a lot of ground balls, and Ole Miss has, without question, the worst defense in the SEC. And they kick it around a lot. They don't play very good defense in the infield, and because of that, it's led to lots of earner runs. It's led to a lot of miscues. It's just had problems where Riley's results have not been indicative of how well he has pitched. So for Ole Miss, I mean, if you're LSU and you're listening to this and you're going to be at the game on Thursday, that's what you're watching for. Is Ole Miss going to kick the ball around? Are they going to make some errors? Are they going to throw the ball away? Are they going to do some things to impede what typically has been a pretty solid, I mean, it's not dominant, but a pretty solid pitching situation for Riley Maddox? Ole Miss is going to go with Liam Doyle on Friday. He is a Coastal Carolina transfer coming in first year with the Rebels. Big fastball, plays up in the zone, kind of your prototypical Saturday starter, high upside, high ceiling, not necessarily always consistent, but can kind of get on a run and run through outs in a lot of ways. I think that he probably gives Ole Miss their best chance of the three to win. I think that's the best matchup. Now, I don't know when LSU is throwing Luke Holman. I mean, maybe you can fill me in there. I'm not sure, but that's a matchup that's not going to favor Ole Miss because of Holman. But from an Ole Miss side of things, Liam Dole probably is the best option of their three. He's been really good. He was really good last week. And then Mason Nichols will throw on Saturday. He's reliever turned starter. He started in the middle of the season. He was pretty good at Arkansas, was really good against Mississippi State. He's been fairly consistent, even though he's battled some nagging injuries the last few weeks. You know, if there's a momentum for Ole Miss, it's that. They're coming off 2 out of 3 against Texas A&M last week. Texas A&M, obviously the number 2 RPI in the country. They spent a lot of this season at number 1 nationally, and Ole Miss starting pitching was really good. I mean, they held them to, if I'm doing the math in my head, 1 or fewer runs per game from a starting pitching standpoint. Now, they gave up some on Sunday with the bullpen and some things kind of blew up a little bit but starting pitching wise, this is the most consistent that Ole Miss has been all season here as they're getting, at the close now.
Okay, so let's say LSU's head coach keeps the same pitching lineup. Do you think that Ole Miss can kind of compete with LSU in pitching, or what's your opinion on that?
I think there's it's weird in baseball, especially when LSU needs all 3 of them. Yeah, I mean, sure. I think Ole Miss, if LSU stays Holman on day 1, I think Ole Miss has a decent advantage on day 2 with Doyle. I think LSU has a very significant advantage for a number of reasons on day 1 because Holman's the best pitcher of the 6. He clearly has the best stats, the best stuff, all that kind of things. And that would play up against, like I said, competing against Maddox, who Ole Miss might kick it around, might make some errors. It would put a lot of pressure on Ole Miss to play very clean defensively. And then it would leave a swing game on Saturday between, probably what would be the most even game of the series from that standpoint with those 2 game 3 starters. But, to me, the interesting part of it is the psychology of, while Holman is definitely the best option for LSU and their best chance to win a game, there's a lot of pressure on that too because they need all 3. And that's the one you're definitely not supposed to lose. So, if Ole Miss steals that one, well, suddenly things really start flipping and moving around. So there's an inherent pressure because look, anything can happen. LSU definitely could sweep Ole Miss this weekend, but I don't see a sweep in any direction. I feel like it's 2 out of 3, one way or the other. And because of that, I do think there's some mental fortitude that would be required for LSU just simply because you can't fall down at any point because if you don't get the 13 league wins, your chances of making the NCAA tournament are very small.
Right. So what would you do if you were Jay Johnson, LSU's head coach? How would you feel about, what do you think a game plan would be if you were in his shoes?
I'm throwing Luke Holman on day 1 for sure because I need, you can't get all 3 if you don't get the first one. I mean, we can do the cliches and whatever, but they're cliches for a reason. They're true. So I'm
lately he's been doing Luke Holman second day. So
yeah, I know. Yeah. Well, some of the things now. Look, I don't know from a Luke Holman standpoint as far as can he bounce back a day early physically. I have no way to answer that. But if you think he's going to be close to 100%. What would bother me if I'm Jay Johnson is throwing him second in a must-win series and it being over before he ever touches the mound. Like it's almost kind of like a postseason tournament for LSU in a way because if they lose game one, there's a chance that they're completely out of things before Luke Holman even touches the ball on Friday and before the rest of the series plays out. Now, the swing to that is you win on Thursday without Luke Holman, and suddenly he picks up the ball and you've got all this energy. So you're really putting a lot of pressure and you're banking a lot on that number 2 starter there on Thursday. But if I believe that it would not sacrifice Holman's ability to win a baseball game, I would throw him day one. But again, I have no idea kind of what that looks like from his standpoint. And then, I mean, you're just trying to throw strikes. Look, Ole Miss, there's a reason they are where they are right now in the league. They're 11-16 in the SEC. They lost to Southern Miss last night. They blew a 4-run early lead. They get beat 7-4 in Hattiesburg on the way to Baton Rouge. They didn't even come back home. They just went straight to Baton Rouge from Hattiesburg last night. There's a reason why they're there. Is I think they're 10th or 11th in the SEC in hitting. They are 13th or 14th in the SEC in pitching, and they're 14th in the SEC in fielding. So, I mean, if you're Jay Johnson, you're just urging your guys who are talented, even though the record is 10-17, just to play clean baseball. If you play clean baseball, you have a chance to win games. You know, so much of LSU's problems have been self-inflicted, have been kind of shooting themselves in the foot over and over and over again. So, I mean, I think that's the part of this, is that both these teams have been so charitable to opponents throughout the season that it's simply who can play basic baseball. It's who can hit situationally and all these boring things that we typically don't even focus on, but you're kind of focused on here because they don't do those things in ways that are, you know, the ways to win baseball games that are consistent throughout the SEC for the better teams. And that's what Ole Miss hasn't done. That's what LSU hasn't done. So, I mean, you know, we can talk a lot of strategy, and I think that's very relevant. At the same time, I think this is simply about who catches the baseball and throws it.
Right. And definitely probably also LSU has a little bit of home advantage.
Oh, sure. Yeah, 100%.
Statistically, if Ole Miss hasn't won.
Well, and frankly, in the SEC period, I mean, this has been the biggest discrepancy on home versus away record in a long time. I haven't tracked it terribly far back, but when you look at recent years, home teams inherently have been more successful than they have in the past. And LSU obviously has a really good environment. It's a hard place to play. It's gone a little bit, but there's always been a little bit of extra something on this series for Ole Miss just because Mike Bianco played there. He's in the LSU Baseball Hall of Fame. He's kind of Skip Bertman's main disciple, if you will. I mean, all those different things. And I felt like that always added some baggage. I'll be curious to see a little bit. This is Ole Miss's first trip to Baton Rouge since the national title in 2022. So I'll be curious to see if that's lessened a little bit, if that sort of broke all that stuff free and it's not a big of a deal. I don't know. I have no real answer there, but I think that, you know, something that has always sort of been in the back of minds a little bit could potentially be different. I mean, you know, 2 years ago was somewhat of a surreal moment because Drew Bianco was playing at LSU, Mike's kid, and Mike's wearing his Ole Miss uniform, participating in senior day at LSU. He's standing on the field with all the LSU senior parents and the coaching staff and getting the pictures with Jay Johnson and the whole deal. So there's just always been a lot of stuff. And I think that, you know, between that, Mike was a candidate for the job after the 2021 season when Jay Johnson was hired, to the point that he essentially got caught interviewing and ended up having to pull out because he didn't know that he was going to get the job or not. And then he needed to salvage the job he had at Ole Miss after, at that point, 21 seasons. So, you know, there's just so much there that I'm wondering, and I think that it's going to be about baseball for the first time in a long time because a lot of that other stuff sort of went away once both teams have gotten national titles and we've sort of moved out of that Bianco LSU. I don't even really know the word, but the relationship that has been so interesting with that for a long time.
Got it. Do you have any other predictions for Ole Miss for the series, or is that about all the predictions you have? I'm putting you on the spot.
No. Look, I don't. Like I said, I don't know who wins the series. I think it comes down to 2 out of 3, one way or the other. I mean, if one team gets into the postseason, it's probably Ole Miss, just simply because LSU needs that third game, and that's going to be very difficult to do. I think both teams, and I hope for this, I think both teams are going to play better than their record entails at this point. Ole Miss has won 2 series in a row. Now, they blew a Sunday game against Auburn, the worst team in the league, 2 weeks ago, that has been this flashing red light that's just been bothering them since that point. Because if they had one more win, you'd just be talking about getting one win this weekend, trying to get out of there, even if LSU gets 2 and move on with your day. but I think they play inspired baseball. As weird as they've been and as inconsistent as they've been, they have been fairly tough. I mean, they come back, they score 2 in the 8th last Friday to knock off A&M in a game they had to have. They, you know, they come back, they blow them out on Saturday. They didn't play well on Sunday, but they have at least shown up when they had to here to get things done. I think they'll play well. The interesting thing for me, the thing that I'll watch is if Ole Miss wins the second game of the series. We'll do it this way. The second game of the series is the most interesting one for me because if Ole Miss wins game one, they're in sort of a win and end situation. They can win on the second day. They're probably in the NCAA tournament. The third game might not even matter at that point.
Right.
If LSU wins on day one, suddenly there's so much pressure on Ole Miss because now you've got to win 2 in a row. LSU's gotten that first one of the 3 they need. They start getting a little momentum. They start rolling downhill a little bit. So I think in both ways, both teams' psyches are going to be tested a little bit after game one. I think game one is such a table setter, even more so than usual, because either LSU is sort of out of this thing if Ole Miss wins game one, and they're just sort of playing out the string, and Ole Miss needs one more. Can LSU put it together to have enough pride to matter enough to try to keep Ole Miss from getting that second one? And if LSU wins the first one, suddenly Ole Miss is feeling a lot of adversity, and they can't lose another one, and it gets kind of interesting. So I think both coaches are going to play game one almost like a game 7, a little bit like a must win, because that game one is completely setting the table for the next 2 days.
Do you think if Ole Miss wins game one that they might switch up who starts pitching, or you think they'll stay pretty consistent with that regardless?
They'll stay consistent because Mason Nichols has been dealing with some injury stuff. He's their game 3 starter. He had some back tightness in the 3rd and 4th innings last week. He had a shoulder issue 2 and 3 weeks ago. Even got scratched from a start a few weeks ago as well. So they're going to try to give him as much rest as possible as far as that pertains. If anything, he probably even needs a little more than is possible because he's having to move up a day already. Because Ole Miss played Friday, Saturday, Sunday last week. Now they're playing Thursday, Friday, Saturday. So no, Mike will stick with those 3 in that rotation. The more interesting thing will be how much he taxes his bullpen in a win or a loss situation on Thursday, because they've only got 2 or 3 guys they really rely on out of there. And when you have to have 2 wins, you're trying to manage what you might need moving forward. The question will be, their closer is a kid named Connor Spencer. Do they try to use him twice in a weekend? Do they have to really pick a spot on the one time that they use him? And sort of how does Mike use those innings once the starter is out of the game? I mean, it is incredibly critical for Ole Miss to get at least 5-6 innings out of Riley Maddox on Thursday from a starting pitching standpoint, because otherwise I'm just not sure they have enough bullpen arms to make it through it.
Okay, got it. So I think we can wrap it up there. Would you like to tell everybody what the social media handles are?
Sure. So our me personally, at Chase Parham, ChaseParham. I see it there on the screen. I write for rebelgrove.com. That's a member of the Rivals Network, olemiss.rivals.com. And then we have a podcast network. It's not all Ole Miss, a lot of SEC, a lot of other stuff as well. That's MPW Digital. You can find that on Spotify and everywhere that podcasts are found. And I'll be in Baton Rouge this weekend. So Ole Miss, LSU, again, starting Thursday.
Awesome. Well, again, I'm Sophia Weiland for Death Valley Insider, and this was Chase Parham. And have a great day. Bye.
Thanks.